Welcome to the Streets and People podcast presented by Get Around Cabo Car Free. Get Around Cabo Car Free is a volunteer community movement advocating for more transport options for people who can't drive in Caboolture and Morayfield in Queensland, and that's around 1 in 2 people around here. In today's podcast, we'll be covering one of these three broad topics. In Not Everyone Drives, we chat with people whose transport options don't include a car in a car-dependent society to discover how they get around and some ideas for making it easier to get around. For people and projects, our conversations are with people working on a specific aspect of inclusive transportation. It might be an academic, an advocacy group, or someone who's making a difference in their community. And in Road Rules 360, John Burrill and Wendy Nash, that's me, discuss Queensland's road rules and legislation for people walking, biking, in wheelchairs or on a scooter. Today we're doing one of our People and Projects episodes. I am on Gubbi Gubbi country and we are very delighted to have SnapSendSolve here. I just love this app. I think it's completely amazing. And so when I finally got the podcast up and running for Get Around Cabo Car Free, I just thought I'm going to contact SnapSendSolve and I'm going to get them on the show. So I was super excited though. When I got the answer, yes, we'll do it, I was like, oh my goodness, okay, this is fantastic. I'm speaking with Monica Lewin, who is the head of product at SnapSendSolve. So perhaps you would like to introduce yourself, maybe which country you're calling from, and we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Wendy. Yep, Monica Lewin, and I am head of product at SnapSendSolve. So I think about our entire platform. We've got an Android and iOS app, and we have a web portal that our responsible authorities, who we call solvers, can log in and see snaps, reports from snappers. So I manage that entire platform, and I am on Wurundjeri land in Victoria right now.
SnapSendSolve is a community reporting app that uses crowdsourcing to connect problems to problem solvers. They make it easy to report anything to anyone, anywhere in Australia or New Zealand. For example, a broken swing or a dumped mattress. Just take a photo, choose the issue, and send. You don't have to know who's responsible. They do, and they get it to the right place to get resolved. By connecting snappers to solvers, SnapSendSolve empowers both sides to make our shared spaces safer, more usable, and generally nicer to be in. And I know that's the official thing that I had to say, but I 100% agree with it. It's a fantastic app. You're head of product. What made you want to join SnapSendSolve, and what is it that you like about being head of product? What does a head of product even do?
So the first part of my career I spent in advertising, in creative advertising agencies. So I was doing big campaigns, TV, print ads, outdoor billboards for big corporate brands, cereal brands and razors and banks, mobile phones, that kind of thing. I loved being in a creative environment. I really enjoy being around creative people and ideas. But at some point, it felt like, what am I actually doing? What am I contributing to the world? So I started reflecting on that. And out of coincidence of scenarios and situations, I fell into a product role. So I didn't even know that the position existed before I encountered it I was working in-house in a marketing team for a big transport company. And they were developing an app. I fell into that team. And then because of my experience in advertising, there was a lot of transferable skills to the product side of things. So things like setting the vision and the strategy, thinking about what kinds of features we're going to build and put out to people to use. And there were a lot in advertising, same kind of thing. You're thinking about how to bring an idea to life. You're working with a lot of different functions and disciplines within an organization to bring something to life. The difference for me on the product side was, whereas advertising is ephemeral, it lasts for 6 to 8 weeks. It's also something that a lot of people don't like. They flip the channel, they change the radio station, they pass by something in a magazine or scroll past on a website. They're not interested in it. It's a nuisance. Whereas a product, an app, is actually something that's useful. It has staying power. It's something that they keep in their lives because they feel that it's helping them in some way or entertaining them, bringing pleasure, whatever the case may be. So that felt a lot more satisfying to me versus making something that was just this disposable, distracting nuisance. again, going back to what am I actually contributing to the world? So tick something that's useful. But it was in a realm of, it was a big road authority. And I'm actually, I think this is a great synergy, the topic that we're talking about and your world of car-free, because I'm really passionate about leading a car-free life. I don't mind driving. In fact, there's times when I love to drive, but actually I much prefer to be on my bike or on my own 2 feet. I think it's such a much nicer way to get around the world, and also just a world without cars would be so much more pleasant. Anyway, so transport company didn't quite jive with my values. So I was looking, how can I bring my experience in the product space to something that I actually agree with and that suits my lifestyle and what I believe in better. And SnapSendSolve does exactly that. It's about bettering our shared spaces. It's about walking around your community and wanting to improve how we live and how we use those spaces. And to answer your question around what head of product does, so I think about what we actually offer our snappers and our solvers. So people who are walking around and seeing issues, what kind of features we're giving them, how they can use the app, how we can make that experience better. And on the solver side of things, same thing. How do they process the reports? How can we make things more efficient, easier, more seamless?
As you were saying that, I was thinking, actually, your road experience is probably super useful because you know what it's like in roadland, and there is a whole section there on the app about how to get roads fixed. That's a really great feature. And so your experience behind the counter, so to speak, in the road world must have been a huge benefit to the app, and seeing sort of from beginning to end how it works behind the scenes as well. So you weren't coming into the, fixing landscape cold. You actually had that huge back of house experience in a road providing organization.
Yeah, and I think also there's probably just something fundamental about apps themselves that translate one to another. And then there's so many experiences or situations in the app that I was working on previously that we encounter the same thing here. So I can use my learnings from the user experience and how people interacted with that app to inform interactions with the SnapSendSolve app.
Did you inherit the job, or did you join very sort of as it was starting? Were you part of the actually product development, or had you inherited a role, somebody else was doing it and then you picked it up?
SnapSendSolve has an interesting history. So we've actually been around for over a decade, and it was started by our CEO, Danny, who it wasn't something that he proactively had thought about. He encountered a situation in the world and there was a friction point for him, and he thought, this is an opportunity. It's a problem that if I have it, probably other people have it too, and I can solve that opportunity with technology. He had taken his small son to a park, and his son wanted to swing on the swings, and the swing was broken. And Danny stood there thinking, well, who do I tell about this? How do I get this fixed? And he realized it's actually really complicated and something that not a lot of people know about, like who the responsible authority is for just those things that are out in the world that we take for granted. And he thought, well, if we could make an app where it's really simple, you don't have to know who to report to. We do that work for you. So he had that ticking along in the background for a while. He had another job in another company that he was working at. So SnapSendSolve has been around for a while, and it's only been in the past few years that Danny decided, let's actually make a go of this. And, it was gaining a lot of traction in the council space. And he thought, all right, well, now's the time to actually make this a bigger thing. So I came on a few years ago at that moment. So SnapSendSolve, the idea itself had already been around, that you take a photo, set the location of the incident and what the issue actually is, and then we do the rest of the work that already existed. But there have been a bunch of changes that we've made since I started. And I think I was in Victoria, I was employee number 6. And we've grown to, don't quote me on the numbers, but we're definitely over 20 as a whole company now.
And so you've added new features as you've gone along or tweaked things. One of the things that we were talking about the other day when you and I just had a brief introductory chat is you talked about the search function. So I thought, I'm just going to try this. I had somebody the other day and I was just chatting with her. I said, this is an amazing app. It's on the council website. It's on my website. It's just fantastic. And you click it and then And I said, oh, and you can do the search function at the top. And so I just said, we'll look up footpath. And so I searched footpath and it couldn't find it. So I didn't know, because when you and I were talking the other day, the example was shopping trolleys in a creek. And I was thinking about that because there's actually a whole, about 6 shopping trolleys in a creek just up the road here. And so I thought that was a really good example. And I was showing her and it didn't come up with footpath. And I thought, oh, am I doing it wrong, or is there another term?
So you bring up a really interesting topic that's constantly on our minds, which is how do we organize and categorize the incident types, because there are so many and there's constantly more being added as we get new solvers on board and wanting to use SnapSendSolve. So it's something that we're constantly working on and fixing. And what we were talking about the other day is that, somebody might approach an incident type, or even the same person, but just on a different day might think about the issue from a different angle. So with the shopping trolley in the creek, it might be, well, I'm looking at an abandoned shopping trolley and it happens to be in a creek, or I'm standing near a creek and I see an abandoned shopping trolley, and which is your way in. So we're constantly trying to improve finding the right incident type works. We still have a long way to go, so it doesn't always work. So I wouldn't say that you did anything wrong per se. I would just say that right now we haven't built exactly that feature, or maybe for that specific use case, but for other ones it would work that way. But I think what we're trying to do is there is a list of incident types. So if you absolutely don't know what you would want to call something, actually we start at the category level. So there's a higher, more general grouping of issues. And then once you get into that category, then there are things that are specific to that bucket of issues, rather than just having everything exposed as one long list. And then within there, you can either find what you're looking for, or you can type a search term, and if it matches one of our incident types, that will come up. One thing that we've talked about a lot is being smarter with how you can search for things. So being able to search for synonyms. So right now, you would need to search the exact word that is used in the app, and we've tried to use the word that most people would use to describe a certain incident. But in the future, we would love to be able to tag things so that, I think we talked about, if you say rubbish and I say trash, we could still find the appropriate incident type for that scenario. So, something definitely on our minds that we're constantly iterating and trying to improve. One thing I will say is we did a survey with our snappers, and we asked a whole bunch of different questions. And one question was, how hard or easy was it to do a report? And very, very few people told us that it could actually be easier. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't aspire to continually make it easier, but it does say to us that actually there isn't such a problem with difficulty in reporting.
Yeah, I didn't even know the search function existed, because basically I've always just taken a photo and then the address comes up and then I go, oh, it's here, and then goes exactly as you say. You've got the broad categories like abandoned trolley, and then it goes through the different supermarkets and stores that are part of your program, and then it just goes click, 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 and then that's done. So I didn't even know the search function existed, because it was so efficient and I had never had a problem before, but was just part of our conversation. So I absolutely believe that it's super smooth. And you're in Australia and you're in New Zealand. Have you had requests from overseas, from other companies or from other countries rather, where they've gone, that's a really good idea? Has anybody else approached you for doing that?
I believe they have. I wouldn't be able to name anybody specifically. Sure. Because it goes through a different channel, and in the company it would go through our sales executive. So I don't have anybody top of mind that I can give you an example. But yes, I think it's definitely applicable. And when I've been traveling overseas, I'm from the US originally, as you can hear, and I have family in Europe. And when I tell them the idea of SnapSendSolve to a T, everybody says, oh my gosh, we could use that here. We have so many issues that could be reported, and there's no way to do that. So I think it's absolutely it's a universal problem that we're solving and could be very applicable elsewhere in the world.
So the community's obviously been really popular. How did organizations respond to it? How long did it take to build a good number of councils and other organisations, because you've got telcos and supermarkets, were they really happy just to have somebody to do that? Because it must be much easier for them to have SnapSendSolve.
So most of our all of our solvers, the councils and utilities and other government organizations, they have ways for their community members to get in touch with them and let them know about incidents. So it could be a phone call, it could be sending an email. Many of them have forms on their websites that you fill in. SnapSendSolve is a way that makes it super easy for the snapper, for the person in the community to report. So they don't have to, sit on the phone on hold. They don't have to guess at what information the solver might need by, writing a free form email. A lot of times the forms on the solver's websites can be clunky and not intuitive, not that easy to use. So with SnapSendSolve, as you mentioned, you take a photo, you confirm the location of the incident, you pick your issue, you can add a description if you want or need to, and you're done. So, people say, my gosh, it was so easy. It takes 30 seconds. On the solver side of things, they do have those other channels through which they're receiving reports, and a lot of them are committed to those channels and they have to. So, or sometimes some of them even, or I think most of them receive people in person too. But you can imagine that is very time consuming and can be really expensive. So, it takes 10 minutes to speak to someone over the phone and take a report versus receiving a SnapSendSolve report where it's detailed and it's accurate and it's got a photo. So most of those other channels don't give people the opportunity to share an image. And for many of the solvers, that is invaluable. You think about, you send out somebody to clean up graffiti and they're standing and looking around and they're not sure which corner, which building, surface, wall that they're supposed to be addressing. If they have a photo, boom, they're there immediately. They're not calling back to council headquarters or anything like that, or calling the snapper to follow up. It's first time resolution. It's super efficient. So the response from solvers in terms of efficiency has been great. I think on the few other aspects of it, they're trying to engage their communities to be a trustworthy authority, to show that they're prioritizing the livability of their community and also show that they're responsible with budget. So a big piece of that is communication and the fact that we make this easy for them. So within the app and the solver portal, we call it, so it's a website they log into and they can view the reports and process them from there. They can communicate with the snapper. So they can tell the snapper when they viewed a report, they can set it to in progress, they can actually indicate that it's been solved. So they're letting the snapper know how things are progressing. They can also send the snapper a message. So they can write to them and say, thanks so much for reporting this pothole. In fact, this whole street is scheduled for resurfacing in a few months' time. So you can expect it to be fixed then. And we know that so much of having a great experience and a great interaction and relationships in general are based on communication. So facilitating that communication between the snapper and the solver is invaluable, and it's something that some of those other channels don't provide. I think solvers also recognize that it's the way that their customers, and they do call them customers, they think of them as their customers, that their customers prefer to report. And that's because reporting itself is so easy. It's also a one-stop shop, so you only need SnapSendSolve to report to any local authority anywhere in Australia and New Zealand. So you don't need a bunch of apps or go to a lot of websites. It's just the one tool, and it's more accessible than a lot of traditional channels. So those solvers recognize that, and they actually make it a preferred tool, or at least make it a channel that's available to their communities to report through.
I think the simplicity of the app as an end user is amazing. So here in Caboolture, we have a very, very class diverse community. We have quite wealthy, quite well educated, and we also have people who have less levels of education, more hardship. It can be hard to know how to get your message across to a council, say, or an organisation. And so when I bump into people and I tell them about the app, they love it, because when life is hard and maybe you don't know how to convey things, you don't feel like you've got the right sense of education to be able to say it in a good way, it can be difficult to get your message across. So what I really love about this is it almost bypasses any cultural or language barriers. Once you know what things mean, then you don't really have any of those barriers. So one of the women, she said, I love the app. I can do it for footpaths when they don't have ramps, for instance. She would never have gone to council and reported it. So one of the things that I really come across is there's no point complaining because nothing will get done. So my reply is, well, nothing gets done because no one complains. I was thinking about this before we came on. What I like about the app is it's not complaining, actually. And when you ring up council, it feels like I'm complaining about something. People don't like to feel like they're being complainers. But what you've got here with the app is all you're doing is reporting an issue. You're not having to think, will they think I'm a bad person? And I'm not saying it's necessarily very conscious that we do have that, but we all come with history and we just go, maybe they won't want to talk to me, or they'll be rude, or a lot of organisations haven't always been really good with knowing how to deal with people from all sorts of different backgrounds. We're much better now, we're much more customer friendly, but if you've got that history, then it can be quite difficult. Here, there's a lot of people who don't have smartphones. You don't have a website.
You can go on SnapSendSolve.com and we have a web experience there, so you can do a report on our website. And many authorities have us on their own websites, and it replaces their web forms. So SnapSendSolve is, we call it, embedded on the web, on their website. So you can absolutely use SnapSendSolve with a computer.
That's great news, because so there you are. See, I've learned something today, definitely. What sort of response have you had from people, obviously people like me who rave? Has the response from the community been quite good? Have you had a lot of uptake, say from Queensland? Have you had a lot of snappers? How many snappers have you had?
So we have 11% of our snaps come from Queenslanders. I would put that into the context of we started in Melbourne, in Victoria. So as a local business, it's not a surprise that half of our snaps come from Victoria. But New South Wales, I think, contributes 25%, and then Queensland 11%. It's definitely a focus area for us to build up our snapper base in both of those states, given that they're almost equally as populous. But yeah, there are many issues that come from Queenslanders themselves. You were talking about, Wendy, this sense from people that, well, why would I report or complain if nothing is going to get done? And I think going back again to how easy SnapSendSolve is, it's almost like, well, what have I got to lose? So yes, there's a lot of people walking around, and I think we've become apathetic or even numb to many issues because of this, learned helplessness, I would call it, that, well, even if I said something, nothing would actually happen. But because we make it so easy, you can snap something in 30 seconds. It's almost like, well, why wouldn't I? And I think to your point also about creating that bit of distance between yourself and the person you are, who would maybe be interpreting it as a complaint, that also encourages people to do the snap. So it's so easy, and also you're not facing somebody. It's not a confrontation. So many issues get solved. We have a 91% solved rate. So our snappers, we ask snappers, did your snap get solved? And in 91% of instances, they say, yes, my snap got solved, which is incredible. And, depending on what the incident is, it could even be higher than that. So our top 3 are dumped rubbish, fallen tree, and abandoned trolley. So chances are, if you report one of those things, it's going to get solved. And what a great feeling that is. Not only have you fixed something that was impeding your life, but you've also made the community better for those around you. And that just, that great feeling just fuels itself and creates this virtuous cycle. I think also on the flip side, on the solver side, people might think, oh, I'm burdening my local council, or I'm being annoying, I'm being that complainer. I think the way to think about it is councils actually really appreciate it. They have limited resources. They can't have their staff members walking every centimeter, every kilometer of their jurisdiction. Snappers are their eyes and ears, and they appreciate that kind of thing because issues can be nipped in the bud. They can be fixed preemptively before they become huge issues and really affect a lot of people and maybe even harm people. So an example would be a tree that has just reached the end of its life and it's dying and it's hollow inside, and it could fall over and it could harm property, or even worse, it could harm somebody or animals. But if snappers are walking out and about, they're taking their morning walks in the park, and somebody sees that tree is teetering or looks frail, they can report it, and council is grateful for that.
Yeah, that reminds me I think about a month ago, I gave a talk about Get Around Cabo Car Free. We're not against cars, but we just want to be able to give people who can't drive options, other ways of transportation. And some people don't want to drive, and we want to give them options too. So we're not against the car. Cars are great for many things, but let's not need to have to use that for everything. So I was talking about Get Around Cabo Car Free, and I was talking about SnapSendSolve as a way for people in the community to feel like they are able to participate in making their community better. And as it happens, a woman, it was the first time she'd gone to this group, and she'd been feeling quite isolated, she'd been feeling quite poorly and unfit, and she was sort of needing a bit of something to do and something to get out, and a bit of a reason. And she went, SnapSendSolve. And so I helped her download the app on the phone, and she just is going around everywhere. And she has this sense of contributing to the community, because I think when you're older and you're not in the workforce, you can feel that you don't have a sense of contribution to the community. But this is, I think, something that's really great. I know that for me, I've reported a lot of problems here in Caboolture, pavements and things like that, and people go, there's no point complaining because nothing will get done. And I said, have you been up on King Street in Caboolture, which is one of our main streets, and seen how all those footpaths have been repaired? And they said, yeah. And I said, that's me using the app. And then they really get it, because they get a sense of confidence that it is possible to get things fixed just really easily. As you say, you're going along, snap. Takes 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever. But I love the idea too that it helps people who perhaps feel marginalized or feel outside of the mainstream of society or no longer useful in society. That's something that takes no effort, no time, and they can go about their day and get the community area, the sort of space we live in, so much better. Definitely. I love that. So I'm raving again. Sorry.
No, I mean, I love that you're sharing it and that you're being an ambassador for us and helping people download the app. That's amazing. And something that we talk about a lot is that it's more than just fixing problems. It's creating community, it's fostering community, and it's joining a community of like-minded people. We recognize that not everybody is going to be a snapper. Yes, in a perfect world, in our utopia, everyone is a snapper and everybody cares. We know that not everyone is going to care and report, but the people who do really, they have a shared sensibility and they're grounded in the same values. And I think that, that's something that really fuels us. And it informs what we do. So, for example, we just released 2 features. One we call snap sharing, and the other it's about after photos. So, when you're doing your snap, you're snapping the issue itself. So that's a before photo. That is, the thing that is wrong. And then when it gets fixed, that's your after. You can go back and you can take a photo and you can show that it got fixed. And we've actually created this beautiful side-by-side image. We just output it for you in the app so you can see what it was like before and what it's like now that it's gotten fixed. And then you can share that. So you could share that on a Facebook page. You could share that to a WhatsApp group. You could share that on Instagram to your community, your friends and family, to show your contribution to making your community better, and also to celebrate the solver and say, this solver took care of this issue to make our spaces better. That stems from what you were talking about feeling like you have purpose in the world and that you're contributing to society in a productive and valuable way, even if you're not directly part of the workforce.
Yeah, so in terms of that, so where would I find that post? Do I just take a photo exactly as I did every other time? And then there's an option somewhere which says the after photo. Where is it in the app?
Exactly. So if you open the app, at the bottom, there's a little tab called History, and that's where you can see a list of all of your active snaps and your closed snaps. And if you tap on any one of those reports, you will see a photo at the top. And it should be a split screen if you have the latest app version.
Okay, so I've got active and then closed. So if I go onto one of the closed ones, that would be it. And so if I just click on it, and then I can, look, there it is. I can see it. I see what you mean now. That's fantastic. I love it. See, excuse me. I love it. I love the simplicity of it. I had no idea that's where it was. So, I have learned something new today as well. So we're going to wrap up here. Anything else you would like to share about the app, or perhaps some advice, or if somebody wants to have a feature added, anything else that you would like to say to our people community listening?
I think the biggest thing I would like to say is be on the lookout for issues. Don't feel like they won't get fixed, because they will. But you need to play a part in that. So do take the time, and it is a very minimal amount of time, as we've discussed, to see those issues and just quickly take a photo and do a snap and send it off to your solver, because chances are things will get fixed and you'll feel great for it and you'll have made your community better. We 100% take inspiration from our users. So direct feedback, there is a section in the app for feedback, and we love hearing from people. And we also observe how our snappers and our solvers are using SnapSendSolve. So even if you don't tell us directly, we're looking for how things are being used, and we're constantly making improvements. But if there is anything that's a niggle, anything that's confusing, anything that's missing that you would love to see, absolutely let us know about it. And the best way to do that is through the feedback section in the app.
Well, it's been so lovely to have you on the show. I'm just super stoked. I'm a bit starry-eyed. I'm sorry about this. I think the app is amazing. I love it, and keep going. And I think it's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks for enjoying Streets and People, presented by Get Around Cabo Car Free. We publish our podcasts regularly at the usual places and on our website, where you can find out more about us. Our website is www.getaroundcabo, C-A-B-O, carfree, carfree.com.au. Our theme music is The Thief on AM Sound, which is just like the cars on our roads, always stealing our space. So let's stop that thief.